Welcome back. Our second guest tonight is life coach, speaker, and author Tanya Brown. Tanya uses her own personal experiences to focus on the causes, recognition, and effective coping skills necessary to manage stress, depression, and anxiety. Her presentation is stimulating and guides the audience through a process of turning mental illness into mental health. Tanya emphasizes the significance of proper self-care in achieving and sustaining an optimal quality of life. Please welcome to the show, Tanya Brown. Welcome to the show, Tanya.
Great. Hey, Danielle. Thanks for having me.
Welcome, Tanya.
Hey, thanks, Denise. Thanks, you too.
It's wonderful having you. So I want to ask you, I know that you speak on mental health. I'd like to know how you initially got started speaking and being so passionate about this issue of mental health.
You know, first I'd like to address, I think as a society, we really need to come up with like a uniform definition of mental health and mental illness, because a lot of times people misconstrue the two. Mental health is about maintenance and sustaining optimal mental well-being, and you do that through, tools of self-care, whether it's a meditation or a journaling, and I'll tap into that a little bit later. But mental illness are the ones that are diagnostic. So those are the depressions, those who suffer from depression, bipolar, schizophrenia. So my message really is, how can we prevent mental illness? Because we can. Many people are predisposed to mental illness, but you can prevent it. And if you can't prevent it, there's coping skills on how to manage it, because life isn't over if you've been diagnosed. And then with mental health, what can we do every day to not bury it, not ignore it, not neglect it, but what can we do to help manage our lives? And, funny, Denise and Danielle, I'm just going to call you the DBs, that I never knew. I studied psychology when I was at UCSD, and my first bout of depression came in '89 after my best friend Harissa was killed in Laguna Beach, California. And I didn't know what was going on, even though I studied psychology and I knew what suicide was. But once you experience it, you don't really know how to define it for yourself. And so when I went down to UC San Diego shortly after she got killed, the Coronado Bridge was looking appealing. And I'm like, okay, what in the world is going on? And I fell into this huge depression that I could not get out of for almost 2 years. And Nicole had called me up one day during my experiences with this when I was still a student down there and down in San Diego. And she said, Tanya, she says, if you're unhappy, stop thinking about it. Sometimes she left this quote: delete the need to understand. We don't need to understand everything. Some things just are. And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of the unhappiness and stress that people are experiencing today, is that, why doesn't this work for me? Why does life always come so hard? Why is it that my husband or my girlfriend doesn't like me? Why are my kids driving me crazy? It's all this self-talk as to why life is so hard all the time. And Denise, you're my sister. I still battle with it. And sure, I may, not flip out per se, but I get into my little stressful moments, but, and it may last for a day or a couple of days, but then I'm like, okay, I've got to grab control of it now and learn how to manage this.
Tanya, how do you grab control, and how do you manage that? Because when you start getting into that funk and into that depression, and you sit there, and it's like, how would you be able to tell somebody? It's like, how do you reverse your brain into thinking, I don't want to be depressed. I don't want this to be in my head anymore. How do you do that?
It is the most challenging thing, because you of all people know that it goes back to the question that you originally had asked me, is that when you are so debilitated, and that's what happened to me back in 2004, that my wedding was canceled a month before. I went into full-on self-destructive mode. I was angry. I couldn't eat. I think our mom tried to feed me applesauce and I couldn't eat it. It was just so debilitating. So when somebody is in that horrific, debilitating, can't get out of bed, the wind-up doll that we all see in commercials, it is the hardest thing to start looking around you and seeing the beauty around you. But if you can just and it is so hard, and believe me, it is a skill. I got thrown into a psych ward, for crying out loud, to learn about this.
So being thrown into the psych ward actually helped you get out of this depression? Is that how you were taught the skills on how to snap yourself out?
Yeah, I mean, I remember during the episode that, when we realized that I needed to go into the hospital, I remember you telling me, Tanya, you need to go get coping skills. And I'm like, I don't have them. Kids aren't taught coping skills in school. In some families, it's like, okay, things happen. You just need to pick yourself up by the bootstraps and carry on. But some people don't function that way. And I was one of those people that I just did not have the coping skills on how to get myself out of this. So my inspiration now and my motivation is to help people say, okay, before I get thrown into a psych ward like Tanya did, what tools did she learn that can help me get out? Okay, and these are some of them. The minute that you start, and it may not be that very minute, but if you can practice the skill of getting out of the negative self-talk, because really it is our negative self-talk that keeps us in the funk that we are in. And
absolutely, it's the thought process.
It really is. Your brain, and I think, this isn't all about just like The Secret or positive or pop psychology. This is science, and there is research backing this up. That they can see the activity in the brain, distinguishing what happy thoughts can do to the brain, what activates the brain, and what negative thoughts activate the brain, or where, and how. And so there is science backing this up. So say, for example, Denise, when I'm in the back of the house and I'm like all stressed out because that's just who I am. I'm emotional, I'll admit it. But immediately, instead of complaining about how the backyard looks, about how, we just need to do that in the backyard, or I wish my school would be a lot easier, I go, okay, you know what, Tanya, you got a roof over your head. You got parents and sisters who love you. You've got a happy little dog, even though he drives you crazy sometimes. But you can see it's like start switching it around a little bit.
What triggers that thought process? It's the recognition of your thoughts, right? What triggers you to say, okay, let me change this? Because that, I think is where...
No, and you're very right on, Danielle. It's like that, again, it's a skill. And until you can learn to recognize how affected you are by the little words that you say to yourself or all the little complaints that you say all day, until a person can recognize that. And, we all have that little voice that sits on our shoulder saying, oh, you can't do that. Oh, God, look at this environment. We all have that. So it's really making a concerted effort to say, wow, you know what? I was listening to Tanya, Danielle, and Denise today, and they helped me realize that, you know what, okay, my kitchen may be a mess, but at least I have a kitchen and where I can make a mess. How fortunate are we to be able to have a kitchen? So it's, it sounds silly, but it's like we have to learn. Again, it's a skill. And it's a constant struggle with me as well, but I know it works, so that's why I'm sharing it with people. It's to turn it around, because with every negative statement or thought that you have about yourself or of yourself or about your environment or about someone else, there's always a positive on it. And I'm telling you, once you can acquire the skill, you approach life differently, you approach people with more empathy and more compassion and more gratitude, your life shifts. But again, it is a skill. There's something called cognitive behavioral therapy. And for anybody who is suffering from depression or substance abuse, any type of addiction, cognitive behavioral therapy seems to be, and actually it doesn't seem to be, it is the most effective form of therapy to overcome any type of depression and even with substance abuse. It's been proven.
Well, how do people develop? And I'm going back to this skill of recognizing when your thoughts are running away with you, because that's really what's happening is people's thoughts. They're taken over by their thoughts instead of their thoughts are controlling them, I should say, rather than them controlling their thoughts. And so how do you develop the skill to recognize that you are being taken over by your thoughts again and to turn that around and take control of the wheel? Where is that point, and how do you develop that skill?
I think the point, it comes at different times for different people. It depends on how ready you are. I mean, this took a lot of work. You should see the binder of all the tools and worksheets and everything that I've done. This really, really takes time. It takes patience, and it takes a lot of self-work. I don't like to call it homework. I like to call it self-work, because you really got to work on yourself in order to make these changes. So I think everybody gets to that point at different points in their life. But for any change to happen, everything needs to start with awareness. Okay, so I'm unhappy in my home life. I'm unhappy at work. I'm unhappy when I'm driving the car. I get stressed out easily. I better get control of this wheel right now, or ask for my higher power, or whatever it is, or whoever it is that you pray to. I better get control of whatever's going on in my life, because if I want to make any changes, I need to change how I'm responding or reacting to something. Okay, so here's something that Jack Canfield, and I always use this in my mental health presentation, that Jack Canfield, Chicken Soup for the Soul author, he wrote a book called Yeah, it's a great book. But he wrote a fabulous book called The Success Principles. And in this book, it's great. It's about 5,000 pages, but you know what? It's just a good book to have on your bookshelf. But in it, he talks about the emotion, the reaction, and the outcome. And this is so poignant. So for anybody who's listening here, really listen to this, that an event or a situation will happen in your life. It can be something as running late to getting in a car accident, doesn't matter the magnitude. An event will happen in your life at a moment. It's a split second between that event and your response or your reaction that will determine your outcome. And again, this is a skill, and I still battle with it, but I try every time I run into something, but I know this works if you can just really grab hold of it. So in that split second, if you react, you are going to get an emotional outcome. You're going to get an irrational outcome, okay? And Denise knows me very well that this has happened many times over my life, okay? So I right? Okay, so I'm very, I speak about this and I educate, but you know what? I'm very candid and I'm very vulnerable, and I just figure, you got to be authentic so people really understand and relate to you. But if you can stop that reaction, which is emotional, if you can turn that reaction into, you know what, I'm going to stop, count to 5. I'm going to respond to the situation, because responding will be a more rational response, which will then bring out a more positive and more effective outcome. So it's really a split second. And again, everything starts with awareness. If you're noticing your behavior sucks, if you notice that you're just a negative person, if people have told you you're a negative person, change needs to happen. And in order for any change to happen, you need to be more self-aware of your thoughts, how you're reacting to people, how you're responding to people, because there's a difference, how you're coping to stressful events. Everything starts at that awareness. And what really helps with people is journaling. Journaling is a great concept. It's, okay, here I had an event today. Sit down and assess it. I had an event that happened today, and, it brought everybody down because I reacted totally different, okay? Then turn it around.
Oh, now, wait a minute, 1 second. With your journaling, is that, okay, when you're writing something down, is it because you are taking it outside of yourself and putting it on that piece of paper, so it really doesn't belong to you anymore, that it's kind of like you've taken it out of yourself and given it away, so you're able to deal with it and cope with it better?
Yeah, that's good, Denise. Good question. I think with journaling, it gets you, it's kind of like when you need to make a budget. Or like a food diary. And women, we have all done our food diaries, and many of us have done budgeting. When you get things out on paper, you see things more clearly. So when you're going through an event, you've got behavior, you've got emotions, you've got actions, but you don't have anything written in front of you that makes you really see how did that outcome come to how did I get to that? So just like making that self-assessment, writing it down. Now that's a form of journaling, or journaling is hard for some people. So it's just, and also, going back to that, it's not that you're giving the power of it away. You're actually gaining power because you're becoming more self-aware of who you are. But also, when you write things down, you're leaving your brain open to much more things that need your attention. So, and that's why I'm such an advocate for getting it out of your head and out of your soul and putting it on paper, so then so you don't ruminate on it. Because when we see it, we're like, wow, okay, you know what, I'm seeing everything much more clearly now.
Okay, so what is it that you're doing? Are you teaching people these tools? Are you counseling people through mental wellness? What is it that you, Tanya Brown, are doing for people, or what are you available to do for people?
every time that people think of our family, Denise, they automatically think of domestic violence. And I will always do work on domestic violence just to honor Nicole and survivors and victims. But that was a very indirect experience that happened to me and to you and I, that when you get thrown into a psych ward for 10 days and you do an outpatient every single day for 2.5 months, I feel very connected to that. And it's taken me almost, it was 8 years ago on the 11th of this month that I was put into the what is now Mission Laguna Beach Hospital. And so I'm very passionate about it, but it has taken me almost 8 years to say, hey, you guys, you know what? Yeah, I was in a psych ward. Yes, I wanted to end my life because life sucked and life was hard, and I needed a way out, or I needed to get help. So my goal and my motivation is to reach as many people, whether you're a corporate executive, a stay-at-home mom, or a working mom, college kids. I mean, college kids right now, suicide is on the increase because of the lack of self-care. You know, they're going through a huge life transition. They're independent for the first time. They're scared. They don't know how to do life on their own. And then on top of it, they're not getting their adequate sleep. They're drinking, all those energy drinks all day long, and then they snap.
Yeah, and they're not educated on the preventative measures either a lot of the time. And I think that has a lot to do with what you're doing, which is educating on how to stop it before it gets there.
Tanya, in the public, a lot of bullying and suicides. We just had our first guest on, Richard Paul, and he was talking about how much bullying there is, and he does work with assemblies and teachers and students and everybody as well. What have you seen, or what have you noticed, or what would you tell, these kids, these younger kids, when they're being bullied, and how to kind of prevent that in their thought process of, I don't want to commit suicide? You understand my question?
No, absolutely. And I'm so glad that we are all talking about it. Bullying used to be swept under the rug, and now we're finally, we've given it a name, and we're talking about it. I was just doing some reading this morning, and I read something interesting, that with suicide and bullying, it's like a mental illness causes somebody to commit suicide. So, And I found that to be kind of interesting, and everybody has different research and different sayings on it. But in order to prevent a suicide, in order to prevent a depression, we've got to raise that self-esteem. We've got to teach the kids to really say, hey, you know what, and not be shy about it. Tell mom and dad, you don't be ashamed. Listen to your kid. If you are a parent who you are perhaps, assuming that something's going on at school, maybe your kid's coming home with torn clothes, they're not bringing homework, they're becoming angry, or they're becoming isolating. They're isolating. Oh my God, bullying it has such a huge effect. So what we need to do as a community and as parents is to really encourage kids to speak up and say, you know what, this person's not being very nice to me. And then teach these kids, hey, you know what, you're beautiful. You are a fantastic kid. It's like giving them affirmations to raise their self-esteem. Get them into some social, give them put them into some maybe sports activity or into an activity that they may enjoy. Engage them, help them engage in something that makes them feel good about themselves. Because that in turn will raise the power of esteem. It will raise the self-confidence, because they'll say, well, you know what, I'm really enjoying soccer, or I am enjoying ballet, or whatever the activity is. It raises the child's self-esteem, because bullies will pick on those people that will walk with their with their eyes down instead of walking straight up and walking with confidence. Bullies. I don't know much about bullying, but I'll tell you, it's just like with domestic violence. A batterer will pick on somebody that is, I don't want to say weaker than themselves.
No, but that they believe they can control. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. That's it. So if parents can understand that, hey, you know what, I think my kid is a victim of a bully, and not say, not my kid. Start facing up. This is a really real thing. Kids are killing themselves. And to go one step further, I went to a bully prevention class with John Vandenberg. And in this class, it was through mental health systems in San Diego, there was a boy who killed himself. And after, when his dad was going through his computer, just trying to get some answers, he actually discovered that there are websites out there a questionnaire where kids can ask themselves, where they can answer questions, and then, you know, are you
Is it about themselves?
It's
questions about themselves?
Yeah,
okay.
do you hang out with this kind of a clique? Do you, do you hang out with the dorks? Do you hang out with the popular people? Who do you hang out with? And then real personal questions. And then you submit the answers, and then it gives you the answer on the best way to kill yourself.
Oh my gosh.
So for this particular
this is on the internet?
kid, it's on the internet, and it was a prime time. It was a prime time interview. For your next show, or for further information, I should have done it before the show, but it just popped into my mind. Primetime did this interview, and I can get that link, or you can YouTube it or something. Anyways, so the best way for this particular kid to kill himself was to hang himself. So to go one step further, this internet site taught the kid how to tie his own noose.
Oh my God, that is absolutely horrible.
That is what is out there. I don't think parents today, I think a lot of parents, and I'm generalizing, and I don't want to offend anybody, but parents, you've got to know the passwords. You have got to know everything that your kid is doing online. You've got to open up your eyes to the signs of your child's behavior. Are they isolating? Are they sad? Are they depressed? Do they complain? Do they get headaches? Do they have stomach problems? Do they get anxious? Do they get ticked off easily? These are all signs to something. You have got to open up your eyes and not say, not my kid. Because you, by saying, not my kid, your kid can kill somebody or can kill themselves. It is time to start waking up to this.
Yeah, right. And parents, we need to start paying attention to what's going on, because we're in a society right now that's very, very busy, and the babysitters are the internet and video games, and it takes a lot of pressure on parents who are under a lot of stress, and this is what it's come to. So I think, yes, Tanya, the parents do have to start paying attention, but can you be specific as in addressing parents in particular, what the do's and don'ts for your children as far as preventing bullying and like you said, building self-esteem? I think that's a huge part of it. Huge. And also what not to do. What
I think I'm not a parent, so it's really hard for me to speak up, and I don't really. I mean, I have 7 nephews and nieces, so but again, it's totally different, But from what I've read and from what I've heard, I think the one thing that really stands out to me is that don't give your child too much freedom online. Mm-hmm. Do not give your child too much freedom online, because we always think that bullying. Yeah, we always think things can happen face to face. Do you know that kids are more online and on their text messages and on their iPhones more so than in front of people all day long? I mean,
they don't even know how to talk to people anymore. Kids don't even know how to speak. So
that's it.
Yes, I absolutely agree with you.
I think put a computer. Denise, there's a home that some people were renting in the community that we live in, and I always admire this. And I don't know if you ever saw that, but their computer was in their kitchen, and you can see their kitchen as we were walking by with the dogs. And that has always stood out to me. I was like, that is a family who's taking control of what their kids are doing. So put the computer in a public place.
Instead of in the behind the door in your bedroom. Absolutely.
Right, and when a kid is getting in trouble, don't send the kids to the bedroom, because it's the bedroom where all the toys are at, all the computers and the iPhones and all of that. Take the iPhones away.
Take charge. I think wonderful advice actually is no closed locked doors with computers in them. Absolutely. Keep the door open, have it facing where you can see. I mean, there is a privacy issue there to a point, but how much privacy do you child? Because in doing that, you put them at risk. So there are software programs that can trace where your computer has been.
Absolutely.
Just FYI.
I have a question for the two of you.
Mm-hmm.
Does a child get to have we talk about privacy issues until you're 18 years old? When you move out of your house at the age of 18, don't you have enough privacy? Aren't those first 18 years like the time and the place where a parent molds and educates and gets that child ready for the outside world, when they can have all the privacy in the world? They can have all that privacy after the age of 18 when they move out from underneath your roof. So for me, I think that, keeping that computer in the kitchen in the forefront and letting people know and not having these little secrets is going to keep your kid alive.
Right.
Yes, I agree.
and there's pedophiles and child molesters and people that are bullying, and there's all kinds of really nasty things that are out there on the internet. So, hey, Tanya, best advice. Keep that computer out in plain daylight and right out in the middle of the room. In the kitchen.
And I'm sorry, I really want to have you come back because we are running out of time today, unfortunately. But I do want to have you come back because, as you know, this is something that I'm passionate about as well. and I believe that the underlying issue under every negative outcome has to do with mental wellness and mental illness. So I'd like to have you back and
absolutely
so we can go further into this.
And anybody who has any questions, of course, I'm not a counselor. I'm a life coach and a speaker, so I've got to be very careful on how deep I go with somebody. But if there is somebody listening to this show and and what I have said has resonated with you, God, please do not sit quiet. I don't want what happened to me to happen to you. And I don't want you to get to a point where you are not just thinking about jumping off a bridge, but you will jump off a bridge. So please just...
And we don't want that happening to anybody.
To anybody.
No, we don't.
There is help. So have them reach out to me at Tanya@TanyaBrown.net. And if I cannot help you, I will get somebody who can. And I promise you that.
Tanya Brown is also a part of the Elite Speakers Bureau. So if you'd like to have her speak at any of your events or any of your conferences or corporate assemblies or whatnot, don't hesitate to call, and we'll get Tanya to your community to speak out about mental wellness and the tools that you can use to help yourself or someone that you love. So Tanya, listen, thank you, and we'll have you back here shortly.
Thank you. You're welcome. Enjoy your day.
You too. Take care.
Okay.
Bye.
Thanks. Bye.
We'll be right back.
If you're in the market for a voiceover for your next e-learning project, commercial, audiobook narration, corporate video, or phone system, we are here to assist you. Visit us at www.ineedavoiceover.com.
We'd like to thank both our guests for sharing their expertise and messages with us tonight. We hope you enjoyed tonight's show. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to come back next week.
For guests and other show information, visit us at detoxradio.com. That's DTALKS radio.com. You can also follow us on Twitter at Detox Radio Show and find us on Facebook by clicking the Facebook icon on our website. See you next week. Good night.
Good night.
If you would like information about upcoming shows or are interested in booking a speaker, visit www.detoxradio.com. Thank you for listening to Detox Radio with Denise and Danielle. Be sure to tune in next week for another great show.